for authors, filmmakers, entertainment, and all your listening needs. Listen now to Talk Now Radio, where no topic is taboo.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to Talk Now Radio. This is your host, Royce the Redneck Radio Man. And joining me today is going to be Kip Hartzell. And we're going to be talking about his book, The Atlantean Chronicles. And this book he took a dictation from his father during his passing days and wrote a whole story. And his father said that this was from a past life regression or recall, that he believes he lived in another time. And it's very in-depth, and this is really actually only about a third of the story. And while the author's not claiming that this is, or in fact, a true story, he is saying that his father believed it to be true, and he believes his father was correct that it is true. The only way you could judge for yourself what you think would be, of course, to read the book. If you'd like to learn more about Kip, you can always visit him at his Facebook page, the Atlantean Chronicles, and he's got a regular page you can friend him at as Kip Hartzell, and he'll be happy to put you on his list and chat with you and share information with you. And with that, one more thing I meant to tell everybody. Don't forget that right now the Internet Explorer has come out with a new browser. It doesn't do plugins anymore, so anybody with a new Internet Explorer 11 browser will not be able to work the player on my website because of their new plugin free policy. I recommend using Chrome or Mozilla Firefox or Opera, one of those. The player's still working fine in them. In fact, what's happening is Internet Explorer is trying to move to HTML5, which the other browsers are doing the same thing. Only difference is they're not getting rid of the plugins like IE. IE just wants to go total HTML5. Everybody else is wanting to let everybody have more freedom than IE is letting them have, in other words. Also, don't forget, I now have a new phone app. If you look below the chat room, you'll find the logo to the chat room. Just click on that and download it and put it in your own Android, and you can listen to me through your Android. Also, if you'll scroll down below the chat room, you'll see the Atlantean Chronicles with Kip's picture and his book cover, the description of his book and his bio, and below that you'll see a link to Smashwords, where he's making his book available to purchase and to download for free, but there's going to be special instructions as to what you enter in at that website to get the free download, and I'll let Kip explain that to you here in just a couple of minutes when I bring them into the conversation here. And I'm trying to make sure I haven't forgotten anything else. Don't forget to visit us at www.talknowradio.com, and be happy to have you in the chat room. Membership is free. It gets you into the chat room. You can sign up for the newsletter, and it gets you into the archives. I had to set the archives to where only members can view them because hackers were getting in there and they were crashing my computer. So I apologize for that one, folks. Kip, how are you doing today?
I'm doing great, Royce. Thanks for having me.
Oh, I'm glad to have you, especially after I read your book. I saw where you had made the thing available for free, and I said, well, why would I want to pass this up? It sounds like an interesting read, and, well, I'll be honest with you, I wasn't disappointed. It was very hard to put down.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that.
Now, I noticed this is a story about a man who's on his deathbed who's given notation about a past life that he thinks he lived in on another planet before they actually transported to this planet. And, of course, there were several adventures on the way. And to begin with, I think his sun was going supernova is what destroyed their planet and forced them out into the galaxy in the first place. But I don't want to give away the whole entire book, just kind of give people a little background of where we're coming from with it. You understand what I'm saying there?
I hear you.
So, I take it, you said to me earlier before the show started, you had this thing around for many years before you knew what to do with it. So I take it wasn't your first instinct to write a book about it then.
Well, I always planned to try to get it down into book form. I mean, let me start by telling you a little bit about my father. He was a typical guy. He was a very hard worker. Probably one of the most sanest people I've ever met in my life. Born and raised Roman Catholic and this and that. And later in his life, he started waking up a little bit, I guess you'd call it. I don't really know how to describe it other than to say that. I mean, he wasn't fanatical about anything. He didn't drink, didn't smoke, didn't do drugs. I mean, he was pretty straight-laced, He had grown up in the circus business, and, his parents had been in the business, as well as a lot of my other family from the other side. And, we settled down in Vegas when I was about 4 years old, back in the mid-'70s there. And, he took on work as doing stage and theatrical stuff. He was a master rigger, and the guy could build anything. I mean, anything. He's built everything from illusions for Copperfield to, Siegfried and Roy and whatnot, and just a master craftsman, whatever he touched. So, he took on the business as a stagehand down in Vegas, and then he just kind of progressed from there. And back in 1997, well, we'll go back a year earlier than that. I mean, he had suffered from chemo-induced leukemia at the end, but he had lymphoma for about 10 years, so he was fighting cancer on and off, and everybody knows how that goes. It's just feeling good one moment, and the next you're down in the dirt again. But I love the guy. He was one of the neatest people I've ever met in my life. So we had never discussed what I wrote down in the book before the end there. I mean, he had dropped little hints and stuff. But, in the last 10 years he was alive, he started having a spiritual awakening. He used to, go to Mount Fuji in Japan, and he'd come down to Arizona and go to Sedona down there, some of the natural power points on Earth. And, I didn't really pay much attention of it. I was young back then. Hell, I was 25 when he died, and 42 today. So, back in 97 is when it finally took him out. So he was out on the road with Phantom of the Opera. He was their head rigger for the show. And
wow.
I got a call. I got a call that, he was sick and in the hospital with pneumonia. Well, we didn't know at that point right there, how bad it was. And then finally we got a call back from the hospital, and it wasn't pneumonia. It was chemo-induced leukemia, and he was too sick to even fly back. So long story short, yeah, it was rough news, but I guess after dealing with it, watching him dying for 10 years, you're kind of used to the notion of it and everything, as bad as it sounds. But the only thing we wanted to do is make sure to get him back here home to Vegas before he went. So his mother was still alive at the time, and his brothers were down here, and of course me and my brother lived here with our mother. And so we finally got enough money together and had to rent an air ambulance to get him back here. So leading into how the story came to be, he was in the hospital. They wanted to try one last intense treatment and everything, which didn't end up working. But in the meantime, and all this, I had just started my very first job at a major airline at the time, America West, and here I am spending every waking moment at the hospital with my father, which leads us into, as I'm sitting there with my father, he eventually starts telling me a story in between him passing out and running in and out of consciousness. And he tells me to get a notepad and start writing stuff down. So I did, and this went on for over 2 weeks.
Okay. Now, did this cause any jobs with you on your problems with you on your new job? I mean.
Well, no, not at the time, actually. The guy that hired me on the airline right there was just a very kind, compassionate person and everything. So he worked with me, throughout this, it was over a month that he was here before he went, but I was still going to work, and I was just going to work to the hospital afterwards, and I had to deal with it in my own way.
Well, it's good to hear that there's still compassion left in the world. It's so rare, it seems like I see it anymore.
No, I hear you. So I'm always a little sympathetic when people got family ill and whatnot. But anyway, my father just, he started telling me this incredible tale, and I really didn't know what to think of it at the time at first. I thought he was hallucinating. And, they had him on so many drugs and whatnot, but, he started the story at the beginning, and then he'd pass out along the way, in the middle of a sentence or this or that, and then maybe 15 minutes to an hour later, he'd wake back up and start telling it right from where he left off. And, of course, me being a non-believer at the time, I would question him and try to go back to things he said or, stuff I wrote down and everything, and I got the same answer every time. But now my mind's a little bit blown away. I'm like, this is my father. I've never known him to be crazy or anything like that, but here he's telling me this epic tale of, life and humanity and the beginnings of how we came to Earth and Atlantis and everything else. It was just almost too much to take at the time.
You have tales of coming from an entirely different solar system and entirely different galaxy that we wouldn't even be able to see from through our telescopes if we was to look at it because it's blocked by the Milky Way. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Which I got to tell you, that was quite a tale as far as the actual trip and what all it involved, the things that they ran into, the obstacles they had to overcome, the good luck that they run into, the technology that they found along the way. It's a pretty, it does read a lot like I guess you might call it a suspense thriller, action, novel of some sorts, futuristic.
Yeah, it's got a little bit of everything in there.
Yeah, it really does. It's got a spiritualistic in it and holistic, but it really made for a very fascinating, I would be surprised if you couldn't turn that thing into a movie, to be honest with you. It's reminiscent of, say, like Babylon 5 or, say, Star Wars or something.
Yeah, it's something else. The story itself is just unbelievable. And in writing the book, and I need to give some credit here, I have a co-author for the book, and his name is Tom. And Tom DeHay is just one of the neatest people and the kindest people you ever met in your life. He's just a good old boy from Texas, coincidentally or not, who lived up here for 20 years, and he worked with me at the airline there. And I'll bring Tom into the picture here is, I've always noticed Tom with science fiction and reading books and this and that. And then finally one day I asked him, I said, Tom, you ever thought about writing a book? And he says, well, I thought about it and I've tried to start it a couple of times, but then the logistics of it just got a little confusing and everything. So me and Tom kind of pooled together. I showed Tom the core story of the book, as my father, actually the notes that I wrote down from him. And Tom was just blown away by it. And we started working on it, and it's not nothing we wrote in a day, I'll tell you that. It took us about 2.5 years by the time it was all said and done before we were happy with the first book of it. This is a 3-book deal right now, by the way. Book 2's underway, and book 3 will be written, but we have the core of each story off my father's original, past life regression notes.
So this wasn't told in the actual form it's in the book right now. For example, it would say missing characters and maybe places or place names or something to that effect. Yeah,
well, there's a lot of characters are going to transcend through because back then the people in the story right here, as per it was told to me, they lived an incredibly long time. There was no such thing as they were almost immortal because of the technology and whatnot.
Right. That was one of the interesting parts. As long as they were close to the source, they didn't age.
Yeah, and you only started aging after Atlantis had left. So not to give too much away there, but
right.
Anyhow, that's how the book started right there. Is my father on his deathbed telling me the story. I will tell you this is, as the story concluded of his notes and everything, it's almost like he hung around to make sure he passed along this story to me because he died a day later.
Yeah, it must have been important to him that it gets out in the public eye somehow, probably depending on you to do it. Now,
yeah, well, his original intention, he told me, was to write the story down himself and everything, but, life's little ups and downs and being sick and this and that. I had no idea he had the story in him and this past life regression, and he had no idea how many times he's relived his life.
well, there's something. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you.
The way he explained it is he would, it seemed like at the end of his life cycle each time, it would all come flooding back to him.
Well, one of the things he put in the book you did that caught my attention that I just couldn't help but ask out of curiosity is when it come to the part where they met other extraterrestrial beings like the bull types and the horse types. Was this a part that he said he actually remembered from a past life that, during the course of his trip into this galaxy, he had met these other beings, or was this something that was put in there for the sake of the story?
Well, it's a little bit of both. There was some that he explained to me. We added some in there. It just kind of flowed together. I mean, a lot of the Greek mythology and everything has come into play in the story itself. But I mean, it's nothing new. If you look around the planet and you look at all the old Egyptian sites, and I don't care what culture it is and everything, I mean, you're going to find the evidence is out there. We were far more advanced a long, long time ago than religion or anything else will ever teach you. The evidence is there. You can go to places like,
Well, you can go to any library and find books with the evidence in it. You can surf the web and find evidence of it. The problem is people want to refute the evidence, and they don't want to do it on a very firm grounding when they do it.
My belief is changed a lot in years. I believe that yes, there was so much more before. I mean, you tell me how 800-ton blocks got to the top of a mountain where there's no core in Bolivia there with laser cut precision. It'd be hard pressed to make these things today, but you had this whole complex up there. So many examples around the world, and mainstream media and everything else wants to dispute them all. But, they can carbon date this stuff. I mean, your Baghdad city alone, they've dated back at least 20,000 years
or more. In fact, I'm reading.
That's a whole other subject.
Oh yeah, but I'm reading a book right now by Richard Dewhurst about the ancient giants who ruled America, and some of these datings go back further than that, when giants walked the land. Now, also, that was something else I was going to ask you about in your book. From his memories of the past life, weren't there Atlanteans that came to Earth of a larger stature, like giant size, compared to us?
Yes, they were. Much larger.
Which ties in with the book I'm reading now. Some of the finds they could be from these Atlantean originals, in other words.
Yes, indeed, it could be.
Now, I want to also mention to everybody, I forgot to say it earlier, if you'd like to call in and ask a question, the number is 832-632-7904. I do realize that many of y'all probably won't even hear this show until it's in the archive, and it'd be a little bit late to call then, as the guest will no longer be on the line. So, anybody listening live, now's the good time to call in and ask your questions. We can always pause the show long enough to answer them. Now, yeah, I couldn't help but make notice of the fact that they were of a much larger stature. And I don't want to really jump boat you too far ahead on your other books, because, I mean, at the time I called you, I was not aware that you had two sequels that you were planning to write and have come out, that the story was that I only read about a third of it, in other words. But you took me by surprise when you said something about the destroyers in Armageddon, because we all know of Armageddon from the Bible. Is there a connection between the original Atlanteans and the Bible stories?
I think there's a connection between the original Atlanteans and all people in all religions on the planet. my story starts off obviously in a different place, and they go through their perils with their technology and create. This is over hundreds of thousands of years of travel. Along the way, they meet the enemy, which my father only explained the enemy as the enemy, and he alluded to the alien grays as the possible culprits for abductions and trying to find the Atlanteans again. So it's, it all kinds of transcends and goes into the same direction.
Okay, hang on just one second. All right, now, one thing I wanted to ask you real quick, is whether or not you're moving around because you keep breaking up.
Oh, I'm not. How about now? Are we good?
Yeah, that sounds better. Now, you said something earlier about the gray aliens, and I may be asking a question that might be giving away a little bit too much, and if I do apologize. I'm dying of curiosity here. But you said something about the grays. Is there a connection between them that you can share with us and the destroyers?
Well, I believe that the grays are the destroyers. Along the travel of making it here to Earth, they ran into an enemy. First they found basically a knowledge archive, a place that they went, without giving away too much, that increased their knowledge and their physical properties and their mental telepathy and whatnot, just thousands and thousands of times. This archive also had a history of the universes that they've been in and others had been in, and it had foe there that was systematically destroying anybody that reached a certain technology. So, I was trying to ask him questions as he was telling me this stuff, and, without coming and saying it, he believed that the alien grays and the abductions that had been going on for millennium were directly attributed to this enemy, and this enemy trying to find the Atlanteans. They're trying to find Atlantis. And not to spoil my own story, but Atlantis was a spaceship. It was a very large spaceship, bigger than most people can possibly imagine.
Well, you know what it reminded me of? Did you ever see Power Rangers?
Oh, I probably watched an episode or two here or there, but...
Well, at one point they launched a big half spaceship, half planet they called terra firma. And your description of your spaceship Atlantis reminded me of this terra firma.
Really? I'm going to have to check that out.
It was, I think it was Quantum Rangers, but it may not have been. They've had Morphin Rangers, Zeo Rangers. My kids were big Ranger fans, but they've had so many of them, I can't remember which ones were which.
I hear you.
I could get back that information to you after I get it later. I know they had these saber swords that they used in the show, but it kind of reminded me of that because it was the ship you described in your book. If I may be so bold as to say this much, was kind of like partially planet, partially spaceship. Wouldn't you say could be maybe an accurate description?
Well, yeah, just because of the sheer size of the thing and the dimensions and everything, it started off as the ship started off as a floating space station around a dying world, and most of the planet had already evacuated in search of a new home, and then you had your people that wanted to stay, thought they could solve their problem with their dying son with science, and they found out a little bit too late it wasn't going to happen, so it was the last ditch. The planet was mostly barren of all natural resources from the mass exodus, 50 years earlier. So this was the last place anybody could go to and try to get off the planet. And along the way of them traveling, they've gotten the technology, they found their places, they've met different species and whatnot, and then they finally eventually run into the enemy. And they did find some of their people along the way.
Right. Now, it was a good thing, though, if you ask me, that they they left out two separate deals. The ones that was in a hurry to escape before it got too late, and the ones that wanted to hold out to the last, because it kind of, I think, helped prepare the second group for the destroyers, if you ask me. Because it kind of had a pre-warning, huh?
I think if they had all gone together, there wouldn't be anybody left to tell the tale.
Right, that's what I'm thinking, because they almost destroyed the first ship if it hadn't hidden inside where it did. The very fact that they found them and gave them a warning about the destroyers is what I mean. I think it helped them survive, in other words. Forewarned is forearmed, in other words. Now, what I wanted to also ask you is, why are you making the book available until June?
I'm just
for free,
building an audience for the story. I'm building an audience for my story here. This book was never intended for me to get rich on or anything else. This is a labor of love for me, and kind of like my father's dying wish that the story go out there. So whether the people believe it or don't believe it, it's not the point of love is to tell the story and see what happens with it.
Well, I'll be honest with you. From my perspective, for me as a reader, whether or not I believe it is not the main crux of the matter as far as an interest in the book, because whether it's a true story or not, it is a fascinating story. And let's face it, we all buy stories that we know to be fictional just for entertainment value alone. And this book, just in that respect alone, is well worth it. It's as good as the Da Vinci Code or any of the others that I've read as far as I'm concerned.
I sure do appreciate that.
That's not to say that it can't be true either. Don't get me wrong. I'm just saying what's primarily important as a buyer or a prospective buyer. You see what I'm saying?
Oh yeah, yeah. It was just I had to put it out there. I put it under the science fiction genre and everything, because where else would I put it? You know, I can claim this book is true, and this is a true and actual account. You know, not everything in the book is true, of course. There's always made up stuff for characters and whatnot like that, but the core of the story is true from these notes that I took 17 years ago on my father's deathbed.
Yeah, the overall gist that you believe it's true that your father lived in another lifetime, that his planet was victim of a sun-going supernova. They had adventures as they transported to our galaxy, and they found their way to this planet. The basic overall story of it, in other words, is true. Whether whether some of the characters were, for entertainment or not, in other words.
Yeah, and I felt good about the book after it was all said and done, because we did stick to we stuck to the core of the story. We didn't really leave anything out. I mean, there's more stuff that happened along the way, that you'll see in book 2, and you'll see even more in book 3, and that's where kind of the religious aspect gets in it a little bit too. And then you'll see through history how it's transpired, and finally to the end where Atlantis will return.
Well, I personally would recommend anybody to scroll down to the bottom of my page and click on the Smashwords link. Matter of fact, before we forget to do this, why don't you give them the instructions on what to do when they get to Smashwords in order to get the book for free?
Well, all you got to do is click on the link. You can type it into Google or anything else. To type in the Atlantean Chronicles, you'll see the Smashwords. It's also available on Amazon too. Amazon is a little bit harder to get them to let me give my book away for free. So I did it through Smashwords because they made it real easy. And, of course, between Smashwords and Amazon, about any ebook site you can find on these two. I think they pretty much own them all at this point. But you click on the Atlantean Chronicles link on Smashwords, and you go it's going to show it as a price of $2.99. You'll start clicking through it and everything, and right before you get to the end, you have to create an account is what you're doing here. But before you get to the end, it'll have a coupon code right there. And if you plug in the current coupon code, it will take that $2.99 and turn it into a 0, and you will be able to download it on any kind of device, whether it's a phone, a Kindle, a computer, anything else. And those of you that are putting it on a computer, all you do is download the free Kindle software or whatever kind of e-reader software you like, and it'll pop right up.
You'll see a link to Smashwords where he's making his book available to purchase and to download for free, but there's going to be special instructions as to what you enter in at that website to get the free download, and I'll let Kip explain that to you here in just a couple of minutes when I bring him into the conversation here. And I'm trying to make sure I haven't forgotten anything else. Don't forget to visit us at www.talknowradio.com. And be happy to have you in the chat room. Membership is free. It gets you into the chat room. You can sign up for the newsletter, and it gets you into the archives. I had to set the archives to where only members can view them because hackers were getting in there and they were crashing my computer. So I apologize for that one, folks. Kip, how are you doing today?
I'm doing great, Royce. Thanks for having me.
Oh, I'm glad to have you, especially after I read your book. I saw where you had made the thing available for free, and I said, well, why would I want to pass this up? It sounds like an interesting read, and, well, I'll be honest with you, I wasn't disappointed. It was very hard to put down.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that.
Now, I noticed this is a story about a man who's on his deathbed who's given notation about a past life that he thinks he lived in on another planet before they actually transported to this planet. And, of course, there were several adventures on the way. And to begin with, I think his sun was going supernova is what destroyed their planet and forced them out into the galaxy in the first place. But I don't want to give away the whole entire book, just kind of give people a little background of where we're coming from with it. You understand what I'm saying there?
I hear you.
So, I take it, you said to me earlier before the show started, you had this thing around for many years before you knew what to do with it.
For authors, filmmakers, entertainment, and all your listening needs. Listen now to Talk Now Radio, where no topic is taboo.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to Talk Now Radio. This is your host, Royce the Redneck Radio Man. And joining me today is going to be Kip Hartzell. And we're going to be talking about his book, The Atlantean Chronicles. And this book he took a dictation from his father during his passing days and wrote a whole story. And his father said that this was from a past life regression or recall, that he believes he lived in another time. And it's very in-depth, and this is really actually only about a third of the story. And while the author's not claiming that this is, or in fact, a true story, he is saying that his father believed it to be true, and he believes his father was correct that it is true. The only way you could judge for yourself what you think would be, of course, to read the book. If you'd like to learn more about Kip, you can always visit him at his Facebook page, The Atlantean Chronicles, and he's got a regular page you can friend him at as Kip Hartzell. And, he'll be happy to, put you on his list and chat with you and share information with you. And with that, one more thing I meant to tell everybody. Don't forget that right now the Internet Explorer has come out with a new browser. It doesn't do plugins anymore, so anybody with a new Internet Explorer 11 browser will not be able to work the player on my website because of their new plugin-free policy. I recommend using Chrome or Mozilla Firefox or Opera, one of those. The player's still working fine in them. In fact, what's happening is Internet Explorer is trying to move to HTML5, which the other browsers are doing the same thing. Only difference is they're not getting rid of the plugins like IE. IE just wants to go total HTML5. Everybody else is wanting to let everybody have more freedom than IE is letting them have, in other words. Also, don't forget, I now have a new phone app. If you look below the chat room, you'll find the logo to the chat room. Just click on that and download it and put it in your own Android, and you can listen to me through your Android. Also, if you'll scroll down below the chat room, you'll see the Atlantean Chronicles with Kip's picture and his book cover, the description of his book and his bio, and below that